I just wanted to give a little plug for CARE, compassion for animals and respect for the earth. As an organization, we run on a shoestring, and we have a donation can, so if you have a couple extra bucks or a lot of extra bucks to throw in it at the end of the evening, please do. So welcome to Vegan Thanksgiving. I don't know hardly any of you. And thank you so much for coming. So I wanted to ask, because I was so curious when I heard that so many people had registered, how many people here are vegan? All right, great. How many people are not vegan but have vegan loved ones in their life and they want to know how to cook for them? Yeah, thank you for coming so much. And how many people are maybe vegetarian, transitioning to vegan, or just are in process? All right, great. And so thank you for coming. I wanted to talk about what we're going to do. We've got a little bit less than 90 minutes, and so I broke the class down into three. Well, first let me say that when I volunteered to teach a cooking class, which I'd never done before, I immediately TiVo'd about 50 TV shows, cooking shows from every ilk, from every type of person, every type of show. And after watching about 15 of them, because sometimes I'm slow on the uptake, I realized they're all in kitchens, and they're all doing this for 30 minutes, and then they're done. And I'm going to be in this place with really no kitchen, and I'm doing this for an hour and a half. So I did get some good ideas, and I have to say that the best ideas I got were from Julia Child. She is my hero. She's been my hero for my whole life. And I realized that it would probably be better if I brought most of the things already made and just did a couple of demonstrations. So in the first 30 minutes, I wanted to talk about the menu, and I want to show you something absolutely magical. And what that is I have here a container of raw cashews. They have been soaked and drained, okay? We are going to turn these raw cashews into the most exquisite confection pie that you've ever tasted, I promise. So we'll be demonstrating that. I wanted to show you the process of turning nuts, coconut oil, and cocoa butter into something completely different. I just discovered raw cashews in the last year, and I'm absolutely in love with them. We will bring out the food that is in the back in crock pots waiting to be served, and we'll eat. And then, I just get to sit back and watch y'all chew. So, all right. So raw cashews. I have to take my hat off, which I don't have, and give a little nod of appreciation to Luna, who's a beautiful young woman who had a booth all summer at the Willits farmers market, where she would show up every week with the most amazing pies, raw pies made with cashews. And she was my inspiration, and I just started experimenting. She didn't give me a recipe. I just started playing around with it and came up with what I came up with. So the first thing we're going to do is, if I was to look at my own recipe, then I'd know what to do. Now, I did cheat a little bit, just so you know, so I didn't have to bring measuring spoons and do everything individually. I have my container that has everything else in it, and we're just going to add that at the end. So what I have in here is I have coconut oil, extra virgin coconut oil, and some shaved cocoa butter. So I'm going to put that in first. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to pulse this just a little bit to just get it. Okay, that works well. All right, so then we'll give it a little bit of help. So unless you have a Vitamix blender, this is a slow, arduous process because most blenders are just not strong enough and fast enough to pulverize the cashews, and so you're going to be starting and stopping and starting and stopping. So who's made raw cashew pie?
No, I made pie.
Nobody's made raw cashews into pie? Yes? Okay. Raw cashews are amazing. I just have to say, I make ricotta out of raw cashews with raw cashews and tofu. I make salad dressing. I make coleslaw dressing. It makes beautiful savory, because when you make ricotta out of it, you mix it with tofu and some, garlic and some olive oil, and you make lasagna, say, or you make a calzone, it actually melts. So it really acts like ricotta. I did not make friends with this blender before we started. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, the cashews are starting to get all beat up. There we go. All right. But we're getting there. It's starting to change. So I'd like to actually, if you want to kind of take a look at this, it's starting. I just wanted you to see the stages. So you see there it goes. Most of the nuts have been chopped up. They've actually all been chopped up, but they're not. What we're going for here is a really, really smooth texture. And what happens is the motor and the blades get really hot and they melt the cocoa butter and the coconut oil. And that helps make this amazingly creamy end result. Okay, so I want to show you how we're getting smooth here. See that? So Tara asked how far in advance can you make this pie? Well, the pie that's already made, that's in the refrigerator, I made yesterday. And so you could, what I was thinking about was, in terms of this menu, which you all have a copy of what's in the menu, that I thought what we would talk about a little bit later is how to organize your time, because there's 7 things that we're going to eat tonight, including the gravy. And some of them need to be made right before you eat, but that's just really 2 things, and everything else can be made at different times in the day, and some things can be made the day before. Some things can be, I think this is the kind of pie that you could even make it a couple of days before and freeze it. I haven't actually tried that, but I do freeze the crust. So as you can see, I made the crust before I came here. I just did this in a mini food processor. It's all raw. It's flax seeds, almonds, pecans, prunes, and agave with a little bit of salt. And it's just zipped up in a mini food processor, so I didn't even need to use a blender. I just have a Braun 200 that has an attachment. And so just grind it up, and then you press this into the pan. And the fun thing about a lot of the things I like to make is you get to get your hands in it. You'll see when we do the kale salad, you can't do it without getting your hands in it. But this, if you don't like to get your hands in it, you can use a spoon and just use the spoon and push the crust in, and then you freeze it so it sets up while you're making the pie. And by the time you're done making the pie, the crust is nice and set up. So we're gonna just kind of cheat a little bit here. Okay. So if I was doing this at home, I would have made this go a little bit further, so it would have gotten a little bit smoother looking. But can you see, especially in the front, can you see that it's pretty smooth looking? Okay, so now basically all we're going to do here is we're going to pour it in the pie shell. And we're going to pretend that 4 hours is passing, and we're going to put it in the freezer for an hour. Now I've been experimenting with the ratio of water to cashews with this pie, and what I found is that no matter how moussey or cheesecakey I make it, it really needs about 4 hours to set up. And that's in the refrigerator. So this is going to be an experiment. We're going to put it in the freezer. And I can see now it's really not as smooth as I would have made it at home, but we're just working with what we got here. So I think that point about the menu is really good to talk about. So of what we're making tonight. So this is our menu. And I have to say this isn't very different from what I tend to eat on Thanksgiving. We're going to make a raw kale salad, and then maple orange sweet potatoes and apples with walnuts, wild rice bread stuffing, and celebration field roast, mushroom gravy, garlic steamed sauteed green beans, and then the no-bake pumpkin pie. So that's the menu. And of those things, you can make the stuffing in advance. Now say you're short on oven space. Say you're having a mixed dinner and there's some giant turkey in the oven and there's not much room. The stuffing can be made the day before, and then it can be put in the crock pot if you have a crock pot, it can be put in that a couple of hours before dinner. And you just put it on low at first until you get it all heated all the way through, and then just leave it on warm. And the crock pot, if you add a little extra, olive oil or earth balance, will actually crust the sides and the top of it just like it had been baked in the oven. So, and the same thing with the sweet potatoes and apples. Now, if you make the sweet potato and apple dish without walnuts, it will do better to sit in a crock pot and get warmed up. That's what we needed to do for here because we didn't have a kitchen. And what I found is I put walnuts in it, and when I baked it, the walnuts were on top, and they had a little bit of oil on them, so they got nice and crispy. But now that it's in the crock pot, they've gotten kind of soft. So, it's a texture thing. It just depends what you like and how you like your food to be. And maybe you don't want to make it with nuts. The recipe that you have does not have nuts on it. Now, several of the things that I've made here in the moment, I threw in a little this or that because I'm that kind of a cook. So I just want to add that when I made the sweet potatoes and apples, I added not just the walnuts, but does everybody know what a microplane is? Okay, it is my favorite kitchen tool in the world that doesn't plug in. It's Tara is demonstrating there is a microplane. It's a little grater, but the holes are so fine, and when you can use them. My 3 favorite uses for a microplane is ginger, garlic, and chocolate, because all 3 of those things it pulverizes them. The chocolate will come out just shaved, just perfectly shaved. But ginger, you peel. Now, do y'all know the ginger peeling trick? I didn't bring any ginger to demonstrate to you, but check it out. All you need is a teaspoon. You don't need a grater, you don't need a knife. You take your piece of ginger and you just scrape down the sides of it with a teaspoon, and the skin comes right off. It's like magic. I mean, who knew? I have always struggled with peeling ginger and how much waste there was. There's absolutely 0 waste when you use a teaspoon. So I'll take like an inch piece of ginger, I'll scrape the skin off with a spoon, and then run it through the microplaner, and it just is this mush that disappears. It just, when you eat the food that the ginger went into, you can't find it. There's no bits. It just dissolves and just flavors your food instead of adding bits. So I put some ginger and I put the nuts in the maple orange sweet potatoes and apples. Now, the wild rice bread stuffing also can, you know, I think I'm a cheat cook. I like, you know, if there's a healthy, organic, or you know, convenience food to use instead. Like if I'm doing something like Thanksgiving, I'm making 7 things. That's a lot of cooking, right? So for the stuffing that I made for here, I had a package that I bought at Trader Joe's of already cooked wild rice. I know that you can buy already peeled and cooked chestnuts too. They come in jars, they come in packages. So I'm a great proponent of cheating when I'm short on time, or if I have an enormous cooking load in front of me. So that is something I did too. Now I want to talk about this main dish thing. I had made a joke to Joan, and she actually put it in the newsletter about the ubiquitous stuffed squash, that I wasn't going to make a stuffed squash because I sometimes think that when people are thinking about, if they think about what vegans eat for Thanksgiving, they think we all eat stuffed squash. And I think stuffed squash is great. Don't get me wrong. I think stuffed squash is awesome. And if you make a Thanksgiving dinner that has a beautiful dressing and you've got some left over or whatever, I like to make butternut squash rings by cutting just the bottoms off the butternut squash and cutting them in rings, taking the seeds and the pulp out of the middle and putting a couple of spoonfuls of stuffing inside the rings and lightly oiling them and baking them, and they're delicious. And I do make stuffed squash, so I just need to just say that I think stuffed squash is a beautiful thing, and it also requires a lot of time and it takes a lot of oven space. And so what I like to just be, I like to cook beautiful food, but I don't like to suffer. So I found that I really love the Celebration Field Roast. I don't know if you've tried it. I'd say that my one complaint about it is that it's a little bit salty. No, it's not, because you buy it. It's already made. Yeah, Celebration Field Roast is something that you buy. It's in the store. It's in the freezer section. They come in 1 pound and 2 pound roasts, and they're delicious, and they go great with gravy and dressing. And it's seitan and grains, and it's actually stuffed, and the stuffing has a little bit of squash in it. So but they're yummy. I like them. So anyway. I would say that the things that need to be made at the last minute, right before you eat, on this menu, would be the green beans. The other thing that really does best if you make it right before dinner is the raw kale salad. So given that these are the 2 things that we're going to make here tonight, I think what we'll do first is we'll start up with the green beans, and while they're cooking, then we'll put the salad together, because one's a little more complicated. So does anybody have any questions at this point? You know, I just do things to my own sense, and so I would say that I probably used a handful of chopped walnuts for that amount, which was a 9 by 13 baking pan. I would say I probably used a little less than a cup. So just a little bit of olive oil. We're doing a lot of beans. So what this is one of my favorite cheat foods, which is better than bouillon, which comes in a jar, and it's not hard. It's soft. It's, you know, sort of like gelled almost. So it dissolves really well in cold water. So I just put a little bit in cold water and then just shook it up, and there's my vegetable broth. Now I do make my own vegetable broth, and I don't really do the thing of saving all my vegetable ends, because you get as an end result what you put in. And if I want really smoking vegetable broth, then I'm going to use the whole onion and the whole garlic and ribs of celery and whole carrots, not just the ends, because then you get a vegetable broth that's made of ends. And that's not to say that there's not a place for that, but if I want to make something really, you know, fancy or whatever, that's not really where I'm going to go. I might use vegetable ends mixed in with, but I don't make my vegetable broth just from vegetable ends. And you know, you can always save your vegetable ends and then just put them in a freezer bag and stick them in the freezer. And then when you want to make a vegetable broth and you've got a bunch of veggies, like, you know, the end of the summer garden. I mean, we were all scrambling before that frost came in a couple of weeks ago to get the last of, you know, the peppers, the tomatoes, whatever. And what are you going to do with it all? You should see my counter at home. I mean, there's like, I have 8 bowls on my counter just filled with things. So I'm due to make a nice, really rich vegetable broth with the last of summer, you know, so we'll have to have sort of a requiem or something while we eat. But anyway, so I'm making a quadruple recipe of the beans. So I have 4 cloves of garlic. And I'm just gonna, see, this is, you know, we're just working with what we got here. That's about 2 pounds of beans. How are the beans cut up was the question. And what I do is I just pick the little stem end off. And then I cut them, what I say is French cut. And I must have heard that somewhere, so I don't really know what that means. I just cut them on a diagonal in bite-sized pieces, pretty much. So what I'm doing here is I'm just getting everything coated with oil. There's just a little bit of oil. I probably used about a little more than a tablespoon. So I think I used about 4 teaspoons. Now when I make this at home for just Tara and myself, basically I just use about a teaspoon of oil. It's just to get it going, because what we're going to do is now comes the vegetable broth. And you just want to cover the bottom of the pan with the broth. And then we're going to cover it. And we're just going to let it simmer until it's done. And you know, I have to play with this. I've never used this pan and all of that. I might need to turn it up. I might need to add a little bit more broth. But we're just going to, so that's why I call it steamed sauteed, because you start it as a saute and then you just finish it steamed. While those are cooking, here's all of the, now I'm going to show you another very cool trick here. We're going to make the raw kale salad. And because I was traveling and coming here and not knowing exactly what I would have to work with, everything is all cut up except for a little bit. And I'm going to show you the coolest trick. I had never eaten a raw kale salad. Again, this is like one of my new passions. It's only been about a year. Let's see, I think that's about all we got room for. So here is how you turn this tough. See the bottoms, the woody stems, they're tough, they're thick. You're not going to eat that part, okay? So what we're going to do, and here's my trick, is you make a little rip on either side of the stem. You hold the stem between your 2 fingers, you take your 2 fingers to the other hand, and you go like that. Done. Ta-da. And what's left is fine. There's not much left. Can you see? Okay? So that makes it really easy. And then, you know, if I want to finish that, I'll just keep going, and then I have a pretty even strips. And then what I'll do is I'll just cross cut them, and that's what we ended up with here. So does anybody want to try? You want to try it? Okay, come on.
And the gloves for your comfort.
The boss says you got to wear the gloves. They will fit you, and they will be so big. So remember the instructions? Make a little rip on either side. Just a little rip. There you go. On that side too. Okay, good. Now hold this tight between 2 fingers, and then take these 2 fingers of this hand and go all the way up. Yes. Good job. All right. Thank you so much. Kale is tough, and it'll grow in your garden. It'll grow. I have had kale that I'm still eating that I planted last spring, and it bolted in terms of that it got real tall, but it never bloomed. It never went to seed. It just got real tall, and I kept giving it some nice nitrogen fertilizer, and now that it's kale season again, it's full of really beautiful, lush green leaves. The biggest problem with growing kale, I find up in Willits, which is where I live, is aphids. They tend to get aphids, and Sometimes the aphids will just land on one plant and that'll be it. But anyway. So, okay, so here is the magic. The magic that's going to happen is we're going to tenderize the kale with an oil and with salt. Now, I've seen recipes for kale salad that involve both avocados and olive oil. But I found that to be too much oil for me. So just know that you can do it either way. You can massage the kale with olive oil and add the avocado in later. But I find that the avocado gives enough oil and that's all that it really needs. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut the avocado in nice big pieces. Now it's going to take a while. This is a big bowl of salad.
And the avocado is a whole food too, so it's much more.
What is your name? Petra. Petra says that that avocado is a whole food as opposed to oil, which is somewhat processed, so it's actually better for you.
Maddy, how many servings are you making?
40. 40 little ones. No, I just just sort of eyeballed out what would be a small salad serving for 40 people, which is how many people registered for the class. All right, so this, can you see this salt? Can you see that it's pink? This is the Himalayan salt. I love this stuff. I don't know why I love it. I think I love it mostly because it's pink. But because it's salt, it tastes like salt, and so I can't say why I love it, except that I just do. So I'm gonna go pretty, give a nice few pinches here. This is a lot of kale. And then we start, and this is where your childhood work at making mud pies really comes in handy. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna squish it. And I find that my hands I don't have dry hands anymore. I eat kale salad probably 4 or 5 times a week, and when I finish doing this part, I go over to the sink and I just sort of like I'm putting on lotion and just kind of rub it in before I wash it off. And my hands are very moisturized these days. I was wondering why, actually. I was wondering, gosh, I haven't used lotion in weeks, and I realized it's because I was
just wondering if making it like this, if you could make, I'm not sure the correct name of the Greek dish, but dolmas?
dolmas.
Dolmas?
So you're saying you
Use that.
use kale instead of
I haven't, but I'm just wondering now by watching you do that, if that could be used.
well, there's so many wonderful things you can make. You can make with raw greens, with collard greens. You can make wraps and things like that. So I'm sure you could try. I'm sure you can experiment. And if you wanted to tenderize it first with some olive oil or with some avocado, and then roll up the rice and raisins, I think that would be great. And so I encourage you to experiment. You really don't have anything to lose, right? Except a few leaves of kale if it doesn't work out. So as you can see, we're getting the bowl it's shrinking already. You see how much it's shrunk since I started? It's only looking like half a bowl now. So who makes raw kale salad here? What do you put in yours? Shredded carrots. What else? What do you put in your salad? Red bell. Do you do the massaging? Do you do it with oil or avocado? Yeah. Olives. In the summertime, I like to put really sweet cherry tomatoes in it, and I'm a girl that likes to eat in season, and my cherry tomatoes are over, and so I was thinking about, well, what would give it a nice sweetness, but not be too sweet, and I thought Asian pears, so I tried Asian pears, and that worked really well. And then I like to put nuts in my salad. I'm a great, I eat a lot of nuts as a vegan. I get, my saturated fat comes from avocados and nuts and the coconut things that I eat. So that's pretty good. I think we still got a few pieces, but mostly that's pretty well integrated. So, yes?
I have another one that's good. Use cashews in my Vitamix with garlic and red peppers.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Cashews,
and
garlic, red peppers.
And make a
pate, sort of like a pate. So what I put in mine is I take some sliced almonds, not slivered almonds, sliced almonds, and I put them in a dry skillet on a medium heat. And I put a little bit of salt on them, and I just shake them around till they start getting warm. And I flip them around, move them around, and then I just was, I'm always experimenting. That's the kind of cook I am. So I took a fork and stuck it in the sugar bowl. So when you stick a fork in the sugar bowl, all that comes out is what gets left on the tines. So it's very little bit of sugar. And I just do that like 3 times and just drizzle that over the almonds. And so I did this before coming here tonight. And what happens is the sugar, it melts and it browns the almonds really, really nicely. So you'll get to taste that. So I'm gonna just sprinkle the almonds. And what I figured was, I figured this as about 4 times or 8 times what I would make at home. So what I did was I just did it in 2 tablespoons. So the recipe in the book calls for, there's my Asian pears, which, doing Asian pears and cutting them in advance was probably not the best way to do Asian pears, but I worked with what I had. So here's our salad, and just mix it up a little bit because we're going to pass this around to a whole bunch of people. And then that's it. Basically you let the salad sit for just a little while, and that just lets the kale get thoroughly tenderized, and then you're ready to go. Now, anybody who has experience with eating avocados knows that avocados tend to get a little brown. They get brown pretty quick. So the kale salad does not store well. It's good to make what you're going to eat at the time. And if you have some leftovers, okay, you can let them go till the next day, but definitely eat them by lunchtime the next day. So we're almost done with our beans here. And how are we doing on time? Okay, it's getting late. So I think we should eat. So would my helper fairies go get some serving implements? And so who's hungry? Yeah? Yeah, I bet you're hungry. Okay, so the beans here, they're like they're still really bright green, and that means that they're still really crunchy, so that's gonna be where I'm gonna stop with them. Now maybe you like your beans to go a little bit further. It's totally about personal preference. So I can just tell by looking at them that some of them are getting that more olivey color, which means they're getting softer, and the ones that are bright green are gonna still be pretty crisp. So I'm gonna stop right there with the beans.
Maddy, how much
Yes.
are your cookbooks?
Well, yeah, let me tell you about my cookbook. When I offered to do this class, I thought, well, I've been putting together a cookbook for 3 years. I've been testing and collecting and developing recipes, and I thought, well, isn't this a good kick in the butt? Why don't you just take fall and winter recipes and put them together, and let's get it out there. So in about 8 days, I took this, and I made 20 copies of this. And so here's the thing. My dear friend Jason at Wild West Express in Willits gave me a deep, deep discount on color copies, but I didn't want to make a black and white book. A black and white book would have been very inexpensive to make, and or much more inexpensive, but I didn't want a black and white book. I wanted you to see the recipes cooked. Like, I have a recipe in here for a rustic mushroom tart. I don't know if any of you are into hunting wild mushrooms, but it is chanterelle season out there. I have found 10 pounds of chanterelles in the last 2 weeks. So there's a color picture. This is very small, but there's a color picture of this rustic mushroom tart, which I'm trying to describe how to make a picture frame with phyllo dough. So anyway, I wanted color. So here's the thing about my cookbook. There's 18 copies here. They cost me $12 a piece to make, so which is ridiculous because you can buy like a full cookbook with 100 recipes in it for $20. Oh well. Oh, every recipe that we're demoing here tonight is in the book. It might be in a slightly different form, just slightly, but aside of the 6 recipes that we made here tonight, there's also 20 other ones that are not in here. And it's basically based on, I like to eat in season, even if eating in season means that I'm using my tomatoes that I canned or my green beans that I froze, etc. So if you'd like to support my endeavor to get a real cookbook produced, this is me starting on my way, and I appreciate your support. What I'm going to need is help serving these. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Maddy, did you see the movie Julie and Julia?
Oh, you bet I did. I cried through the whole thing. I swear, I cried through the whole thing. I just, I need to do this. I'm going to start a sort of an assembly line, and I'll just you know, put a little bit of this, and it's almost like a quarter cup. So those are all quarter cups. No, we're missing the main dish. We don't have the main dish yet. It's coming. Yeah, you can go ahead and pass them out. That would be awesome. Thank you. I've just heard my first, oh my God.
Tara suggested I cut this out for to do the Vanna white goodness, but it looks like
Sure.
that fits.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think that's a great idea. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
It's delicious. It is awesome.
Happy Thanksgiving. Vegans eat well. We eat well. Yeah. So, if you post it, Uncle Jay. So I want to just offer, because the demo pie, it's totally not set up, so I'm not going to serve it. So we have one pie to pass around, and I would like to offer it first to the people in the back that didn't get any salad, that got the smallest portions because we were running out of things. So.
What kind of roast is this?
It's a celebration field roast. Joan actually brought some out to show. It's in the freezer section. No, that's tofurkey. Yeah.
I think you can still use that other one that is not set up.
Yes, we'll try the other one too.
But I'm such a perfectionist.
We're not picky, we don't care.
Okay. Okay.
We've got spoons.
You're right in the front. I'll just load you up. So does anybody have any questions? No, you're all too busy chewing? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Perfect.
Where do you find the chanterelle?
In the woods. Yeah, I live in Willits. They're everywhere. Okay. So I just want to say that here's a 7-course meal that was made entirely plant-based. There is no animal anything in this, and for anybody who's not vegan and not familiar with what vegans eat, could you say that if you ate a meal like this that you would find that there was something missing? No. Yeah. Yeah, so I just want to put that out there for you to think about, because this is a really non-vegan story but Tara told me this story once that just really cracked me up, about how there was a woman who would make a roast, and before she put it in the oven, she'd chop the end off and she'd put it in the pan and she'd roast the roast. And then she had a daughter, and her daughter would chop the end off, and then she had a daughter who would chop the end off, and the granddaughter said, well, why do you chop the end off the roast? And the mother said, well, I don't know, my mother always did it. So she went to her grandmother and said, Grandma, why do you chop the end off the roast? And she says, well, because my mom had a pan and it wasn't big enough. So let that be sort of a metaphor for the way we eat. I think a lot of times we eat the way we eat because it's what we know. And I want to encourage you, whether you're on the path to being a vegan or not, we're all on a path. And if you're standing still, then you're not walking on the path, you're just standing still. And so I want to just encourage you to play with things. When I didn't just wake up one day and I was a vegan, I transitioned. I bought a book called The Mediterranean Vegan Kitchen by Donna Klein. And the reason it was such a great transition book for me was because she didn't use any meat substitutes. It's all vegetables, grains, and beans, and it's all Mediterranean. Now, come on, we live in a kind of almost Mediterranean climate here, and anybody who gardens is just overdone with green beans and garlic and onions and tomatoes and peppers and all of those things, and eggplants and potatoes, and all of those things are in this book. And when I first started, I would add Parmesan cheese, or maybe I'd add chicken or whatever. But after a while, as I was transitioning, and the way I transitioned was to just say, I think I'm going to have a vegan day today. And I would just do it one day at a time. And that one day at a time just made there was no failure. There was absolutely no failure. It was, I'd get up in the morning and I'd make a decision. And some days I'd want to go out and have sushi, and I would want to have fish in my sushi. So I wouldn't declare myself of having a vegan day. And after 3 months of doing this, I realized I was doing it every day, that I was having a vegan day every day. And that's how, and that book by Donna Klein, The Mediterranean Vegan Kitchen, really was huge in helping me transition, because there's wonderful cookbook writers out there. Isa Chandra Moskowitz is one of my shiras. I mean, she's written so many beautiful vegan cookbooks, and her cookbooks, they use tofu, they use soy milk, they use seitan. She's got seitan recipes. Oh, and by the way, I have the best seitan recipe in the world ever. It's called Rach Mouse's Best Seitan Ever in my book. If you
Tell them what
want to. Now, seitan is vital wheat gluten, which is the protein part of the wheat flour. It's separated out, and when you make it into seitan, like what I do with it is I mix it with a little bit of whole wheat flour and some nutritional yeast. That's the dry part of the mixture. And then I make a very strong vegetable broth that I put, I just use ketchup and tamari and a microplane clove of garlic. And that broth is what the liquid that it makes the dough, and it's also the broth that I simmer it in. And it's delicious, and it's a low-fat, low-carb, high-protein food. And I think it's the greatest thing, and it's so easy to make your own. I mean, it takes practice. It's definitely a process, but in my book also I have a seitan sausage recipe, which is actually quite easy. Seitan.
So how do we buy the book?
It's right here. Yes, let me put it up here. So, thank you.
Did everybody get pie?
So what I was saying about the about Isa Chandra Moskowitz, people that are already vegan, I noticed that people who aren't already vegan get a little intimidated by her books because there's so many substitutions. But just play with it. If you want to stop eating butter, just butter because of health reasons, because of compassion reasons, whatever. Try using olive oil instead of butter. You know, if you like buttering your bread, well, do it the Italian way. Get a little dish and put a little olive oil and salt and a basil leaf in there. And yeah, avocado. Yeah. When avocado was, you know, there was a thing about, oh, well, the cheese in the food, you know, how do I do without the cheese? I love cheese. It just doesn't feel like the same thing. Well, in Mexican dishes, I use avocado, and it works beautifully. How do you substitute Parmesan on the top of something? Well, you can take garlic powder and breadcrumbs and olive oil and mix it all up and put it on the top and bake it on the top, and it makes, oh, and some Kalamata olives all chopped up. And that the Kalamata olives gives you the sharp flavor that you would get from Parmesan cheese, and you get the kind of crunchy mouthfeel from the breadcrumbs. So just play around and experiment.
Sorry. Are these pre-autographed?
Oh, would you like it? Or I would so autograph for you, Jay.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
getting two.
So I want to thank you all for coming. We've really overstayed our time here, and I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. Thank you so much.
I'd also like to thank you one more time on behalf of CARE and thank the co-op so much for sponsoring this with us, and Joan and all the
She's washing dishes. Yay, Leslie! Thank you.